Fleur Hassan-Nahoum is the Israeli Foreign Ministry Special Envoy. She's former, of course, Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem and joins us now. Good afternoon to you, Fleur.
Hi, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Well, Israel has made it very clear how unhappy they are with the decision by the Foreign Secretary David Lammy, of course with agreement by our Prime Minister Keir Starmer, to suspend some of the arms export licences to your nation. The claim from David Lammy in his statement to Parliament was there is a clear risk that UK weapons might be used to commit what he called a serious violation of international humanitarian law. This announcement was made, of course, on the day when your nation was united in grief for the 6 hostages who'd been summarily executed, murdered by their Hamas hostage takers in tunnels just before the IDF were able to reach them at the weekend. What is your reaction to what David Lammy announced yesterday?
Well, it's really very disappointing. We're fighting a war we didn't start, we didn't want. It's a defensive war against an Islamist terrorist organization that chopped babies' heads off, raped women, and are putting their own people as human shields. And so what is the message? Don't win this war? Let's help out Hamas? I don't understand what the message is. And again, like you quite rightly mentioned, to do this on the day that we're burying young people, innocent people who spent 11 months in dungeons, and then, you know, with all the hope that we had of getting them released, and then they got shot in the head in such a horrible, tragic way. And, you know, very disappointing. What's it going to do for Israel? Logistically, not much.
It's less than 1% of your military imports. Is it a gesture? But is that gesture being keenly felt? Because you know this war is not just being fought with weapons and with men and women in uniform and Hamas fighters not in uniform living in tunnels and living amongst civilians in Palestine on the ground in Gaza. This war is also being fought internationally on social media and our television screens. How much damage has this done to Israel?
Well, it's very much a media war as well. Makes absolutely no sense. What's going on in this media war, that nobody seems to be connecting the dots with all the evil regimes around the world being funded by Iran, all domestic Islamic terrorism in Europe, and nobody seems to be connecting the dot. They speak about Israel and the Hamas war like if it's something completely separate from a civilization, a war that the whole world is fighting. But like I said, Julia, practically it makes really very little difference. Morally, symbolically, what can I tell you? A few weeks ago, David Lammy also said that he's restoring funding to UNRWA, whose network of schools not only produced some of the most choice terrorists of the 7th of October, they were all employees of UNRWA, but also has a curriculum teaching people in the Palestinian territories how to hate Jews in Israel.
And we've even seen some of the books in the primary schools literally glorifying suicide bombers and children being told that their main job in life was to go and to kill Jews. I mean, it's very blatant. It's not even hidden. But look, the damage being done, the Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, who is not a popular figure in Israel, running a coalition government, he is under an awful lot of pressure, not just from the hostages who remain, 101 hostages, mostly alive, but some we know will be dead, remaining in Gaza. And those families saying, look, you need to do a deal. You need to sign a peace deal with Hamas. Pretty much, it seems to me, they're saying, at any cost to get our people home. We've had huge demonstrations on the street, some turning a little bit ugly over the last 2 days. Huge pressure on the Prime Minister to do a deal. So the extra pressure being added on at that point. What do you make of the demands of those hostages' families and their supporters saying you need to do a deal with Hamas to get a ceasefire, to get those hostages home?
Listen, Julia, I can't judge the families who are so scared for their loved ones, frustrated and angry. We in Israel are a very robust democracy. And so people naturally get angry with their governments. It happens all over the world, and I completely understand that sentiment. But the fact is that Hamas have rejected the last 5 deals. I don't know what they think Israel is not doing. There is one requirement that Netanyahu is not coming down from, and that is to keep control of the Philadelphia corridor, which is essentially the border between Gaza and Egypt. And the reason why he's insisting on this is because all the weapons and armament that were used to slaughter 1,200 of our people and kidnap 250 people were all coming through those tunnels from Egypt. And this is why Netanyahu is insisting on that clause. But that clause has been part of all of the deals that were offered. And objectively, even Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State in the United States, has said that it's Hamas who've been rejecting, that Israel has gone a long, long way for these deals. We're going to be letting out 1,000 terrorists, prisoners with blood on their hands. Israel is really bending backwards, but it's Hamas who keeps saying no. And that really is the problem.
We've had a lot of debate on this show. It's been quite heated at times about the rights and wrongs of this. Claims we've had, from journalists, from people just calling in saying, look, well, Israel is the problem. You're an apartheid nation. You're committing genocide of innocent people, targeting civilians. This is an unfair war, committing war crimes, humanitarian crimes against humanitarian law. What do you say to all of that?
Well, I think, Julia, part of the problem is that people don't actually understand what war is. There's a big difference between war and war crimes. Israel, everything it does, it goes over the top to actually keep within international law. We've let in almost 1 million tons of humanitarian aid in. Objectively, there's been enough aid going in. Objectively, we did not start this war. We did not want this war. These are facts. Objectively, Israel is a country that protects its minorities. 20% of our country are Arab Israelis who have every right that everybody else has. So there's a lot of libels. I call them the modern blood libels that are against Jews, something we've seen for hundreds and thousands of years. And it's just a modern take of a blood libels. 100, 200, 500 years ago, we were, killing Christian babies and using their blood for bread. That's what they were saying. And today, the new blood libel is that we're killing indiscriminately children in Gaza when it's Hamas that are putting them purposefully in harm's way. You have to remember, Hamas does not build tunnels under schools. It builds schools over tunnels. And that has been their investment for the last 15 years since Israel left the Gaza Strip. They could have turned it into Dubai. They could have turned it into Singapore. They could have been the pilot of the Palestinian state. And what did they do instead? They turned it into a terrorist entity. That's what they did in order to attack our people. Where is the territorial claim? Why did they start this war? At the bottom line, Julia, is that they want to destroy the state of Israel. They want to scare us. They want to destroy us. And the state of Israel is only the beginning. This is part of a wider Islamist plot. And what gets to me, again, is that people are not connecting the dots between Hamas and the Houthis and Hezbollah in the north that has destroyed Lebanon, and also your own Islamist domestic terrorism.
No, we don't talk about that, Fleur. We don't like to talk about that. We just, if something happens, we just say there's a mental health problem, and then we all sing Kumbaya, light some candles, and move on. That's the solution, according to the people in charge of this country.
Well, all I can tell you is that when the foreign minister of the Emirates, of the United Arab Emirates, is saying to Europe, don't be so politically correct. You don't understand extremist fundamentalism. This is a moderate Sunni Arab leader saying to the West, you've got it all wrong. You've got to deal with this problem. It's not us, the Jewish state, saying it. It's moderate Sunni countries that are saying you're not dealing with Islamism.
Can I ask just finally, I mean, a point that's been made by Jake Wallace-Simons of the Jewish Chronicle, who's over in Israel at the moment, that over the last 3 years, Britain has sold more than $3 billion of weapons to Qatar, which is a clear state sponsor of jihadism. We've sold almost £2 billion to Saudi Arabia, engaged in the war in Yemen, in which far more innocent people have died than in Gaza. Turkey, which crushed the Kurds, received £800 million of British arms. United Arab Emirates, again, a dictatorship that has purchased almost $500 million. And yet it is Israel, which has bought £83 million of British arms, that is the subject of this banning, the suspension of these arms exports. Why do you think Israel gets so much attention rather than all these other countries in the Middle East who are doing things which everyone should be concerned about. I mean, I'm concerned about children in Gaza dying, but I don't know why people aren't just as concerned by children in Yemen dying.
There's a terrible double standard, Julia, and that is part of this new modern libels of anti-Semitism. Double standards towards Israel is anti-Semitism. That is what it looks like when you either have unrealistic expectations or you judge a country by different standards. But even worse than that, the fact that Qatar is one of the biggest state sponsors of terrorism, of course, together hand in hand with Iran, but they're also, you spoke about the media war earlier, they're also, I've renamed them Goebbels TV, because Al Jazeera, which is sponsored by Qatar, which has so much business with the UK, the US, another country, are poison. They are so poisonous that the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and now Israel have banned them from their countries. And so you have a country that is actively poisoning the minds of the West. And nobody says anything about Qatar. They have a World Cup because they've paid for it.
Yep.
And they are buying the souls of the universities around the world, as well as half of London's assets. And so it's complete double standards. And to me, double standards only means one thing. This obsession and this incredible double standard that you have with Israel, to me, is only a modern form of anti-Semitism. I hate to say it, but that's the truth.
Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, I really appreciate joining us. Israeli Foreign Ministry Special Envoy, former Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem. Thank you for that.